In terms of, height standards and whatnot, setbacks are limited to 4 feet for the side and the rear, but it's silent, SB9 silent on the front yard. I've seen local jurisdictions, why don't I just jump in there? I've seen local jurisdictions impose front yard requirements because, they can. But even then, I still think that that's where that unless clause, comes into play. So, let's look at first, as I mentioned, I think we're probably at around maybe 40 jurisdictions that we've looked at so far. And as I said, these are all coming in as, they're either draft ordinances or urgency ordinances, or we're getting word, we're talking to planners in jurisdictions. I'm going to touch on just a few of them in this webinar. But certainly, if you guys, if anybody watching this has questions about specific jurisdictions, feel free to reach out to us at our contact email, contact@brickwork.la, and we can try and answer your questions. So let's talk about Alhambra, just right at the top of the list, the A city. So Alhambra has identified R1 zone as a single family zone. They have some interesting standards here. They have identified height limits. If you're a 1-story building, limited to 18 feet, and 2 stories limited to 25 feet in height. They want your lots to be 50 feet of frontage. And again, this is where you got to play around with that unless clause, right? So any of these standards that are being imposed, if they can't work on your site, then I think that's room to challenge the city, to say, well, this is going to physically preclude me from constructing my my units. But then Alhambra threw in some interesting standards. They want all of the new projects to be LEED, not just LEED, but LEED Platinum. And I thought that was interesting. That's something you have to apply for. I don't know how that is going to impact development specifically in the city of Alhambra, but I thought that was an interesting requirement. They've identified unannounced inspections of properties for every year for the first 3 years. And what is that? That's obviously them responding to the first the requirement of signing that affidavit that that the applicant has to live at that property for the 3 years following the lot split, right? Especially since it's unannounced inspections. And then they want an affordable requirement. Now, this is something that we are seeing jurisdictions, and I've tried to get clarity on this. I think that the clarity that we've received in terms of can the cities impose affordable requirements is yes. Right, it's an objective. If it's an objective standard, is that requirement going to physically preclude the construction of 2 units? I don't know. I mean, that's something that you might have to prove, right? And I don't know if you can just do that from a financial model. But cities are starting to impose this. Alhambra wants to impose that for 30 years, that your units have to be affordable. Also, how is that going to play into, if you have an affordable requirement, like I think Culver City wants one of the units to be affordable. If in that situation, what if it's an affordable unit, but the person that signed the affidavit is actually living in that unit, right? So I know you have to qualify, but this is all a conversation that you have to talk with housing. Let's talk about, I wanted to mention Pasadena. They were in the news recently, with some pretty steep standards for SB9. They've identified the 4-foot setbacks for the side and the rear, but then minimum 20-foot setback for your front yard. They have a requirement for trees. If you have a mature tree, they basically don't want you to touch it for your tree. Let's see if I can touch on any other jurisdictions. I think I was looking at Sacramento recently. They had passed an emergency ordinance as well. I think they're generally accepting the standards identified by SB9. And a lot of the language within there refers back to it, to just basically copy and paste the standards. City of Los Angeles. So City of Los Angeles has not yet released their memorandum, which, they were instructed to do by City Council before the end of the year. But it's with City of LA, it has to go through multiple departments, right? So, where they're going to land on some of these things is a little bit outstanding. They have identified, at least they've updated their ZEMIS mapping system to identify an eligibility link within there. So if you have a single family property, if you want to go on ZEMIS, you can do a quick check. It's a quick and dirty check on whether or not it meets any of the basic standards, right? For, just to see if your property is actually eligible for SB9, right? And that memo, as I understand it, it's imminent, right? It should, I was hoping it'd come out this week, but it'll probably hopefully next.